My name is Emma Taylor, and at 32, I thought I had finally figured out the delicate balance of family and independence. Living with my younger sister Fiona in our shared downtown apartment had seemed like the perfect arrangement, splitting rent while maintaining our close bond that had carried us through childhood and into adulthood. Our family had always been tight-knit, perhaps too much so. Mom and Dad, James and Catherine Taylor, had raised us with the belief that family comes first, always. Sunday dinners were sacred, holiday traditions non-negotiable, and family secrets stayed within our walls. Growing up, Fiona and I were inseparable, despite our 3-year age gap. She was the artistic dreamer while I was the practical planner. But somehow our differences complemented each other perfectly. The apartment arrangement had started 2 years ago, when Fiona graduated college with her art degree and struggled to find stable work. I was building my freelance consulting business and needed help with expenses, so it seemed natural to offer her the spare bedroom. She contributed what she could from her part-time gallery job and occasional commission pieces, and I covered the larger expenses. It worked beautifully, or so I thought. Our parents were thrilled with the arrangement. "My girls taking care of each other?" Mom would beam during our weekly family calls. Dad appreciated the practical aspects, knowing we were both safe and financially responsible. Even our older brother James seemed relieved that his little sisters were looking out for one another in the big city. But lately, something felt different. Small things at first. Conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, quick glances exchanged between family members during gatherings, phone calls that Fiona would take in her bedroom with the door closed. When I mentioned these observations to my boyfriend of 6 months, he suggested I might be overthinking things, that families naturally have their private moments. The unease grew stronger during last month's family barbecue. I had been telling everyone about landing 3 new major clients for my business consulting practice, excited about the growth and stability it represented. Instead of the usual enthusiasm and congratulations, I noticed hesitant smiles and what felt like forced responses. Mom changed the subject quickly to Fiona's latest art project, and Dad seemed more interested in the baseball game playing on his phone. Later that evening, I overheard a hushed conversation between Mom and Fiona in the kitchen while I was getting drinks from the garage refrigerator. I couldn't make out specific words, but the tone was serious, almost conspiratorial. When I returned to the patio, both of them looked up with bright, artificial smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "Everything okay?" I had asked, setting down the drinks. "Of course, honey," Mom replied too quickly, "just discussing Fiona's upcoming gallery showing." But Fiona's gallery showing wasn't for another 4 months, and they had been talking in whispers, not the excited planning voices I knew so well. The moment stuck with me, creating a small knot of anxiety that seemed to grow larger each day. Now, sitting in my home office reviewing client emails, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with my family dynamic. The people I trusted most in the world seemed to be keeping secrets, and I was starting to wonder if those secrets involved me. The foundation of trust between Fiona and me had been built over years of shared struggles and triumphs. When I first moved to the city 5 years ago to start my consulting business, she had been my lifeline. Fresh out of college with a marketing degree and big dreams, I had rented a small 2-bedroom apartment that I could barely afford on my entry-level salary at a corporate firm. Fiona had just graduated with her fine arts degree and was working part-time at a coffee shop while trying to establish herself as a painter. When I suggested she move in to split expenses, it seemed like the perfect solution for both of us. We had always been close, but living together strengthened our bond in ways I never expected. The real test of our relationship came 2 years ago when I hit rock bottom. The corporate world had crushed my spirit, and I was struggling with severe anxiety and depression. Some days I couldn't get out of bed. Other days I would have panic attacks so intense that Fiona would find me hyperventilating on the bathroom floor. My mental health deteriorated so badly that I had to take a leave of absence from work, which eventually led to me losing my job entirely. During those dark months, Fiona became my anchor. She would bring me tea and toast when I couldn't face cooking. She drove me to therapy appointments when I was too anxious to take public transportation. When I decided to start my own consulting business from home, she helped me set up my office space, designed my business cards, and even created my website logo. She believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. "You're going to be amazing at this," she had told me one evening as we worked on my business plan together at our kitchen table. "You have this incredible ability to see solutions that other people miss. Companies need that." Her faith in me proved prophetic. Within 6 months, I had landed my first major client through a referral from my former therapist, who knew someone in the nonprofit sector. Word spread about my work, and soon I was helping small businesses streamline their operations and improve their efficiency. The income allowed me to not only pay my share of rent, but also start saving money for the first time in my adult life. Fiona celebrated every milestone with me. When I signed my 5th client, she surprised me with a small cake from our favorite bakery. When I was featured in a local business magazine, she framed the article and hung it in our living room. She would often brag about my success to her friends and our family, telling anyone who would listen about how proud she was of her entrepreneurial sister. Our family had always been tight-knit, gathering for every holiday and birthday. Mom would host elaborate Sunday dinners, where we would catch up on each other's lives, share stories, and maintain the connections that had sustained us through various challenges over the years. Dad, despite his quiet nature, was always interested in hearing about our work and would offer practical advice when asked. James had moved back home after college to help Dad with his contracting business, and he often brought his girlfriend Sarah to family gatherings. The dynamic felt balanced and supportive, with each of us pursuing our own paths while maintaining strong family bonds. But something shifted about 3 months ago, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly when or why. It started with small changes in Fiona's behavior. She began spending more time away from the apartment, claiming she was working on a new series of paintings that required her to use the studio space at her old college. When she was home, she seemed distracted, often scrolling through her phone instead of engaging in our usual conversations about work and life. I noticed she had stopped asking about my clients or celebrating my business wins. When I mentioned landing a particularly lucrative contract with a local restaurant chain, she had simply nodded and said, "That's nice," before returning to her phone. The enthusiasm and support that had characterized our relationship seemed to be evaporating. Family dinners became increasingly uncomfortable. I would share updates about my business, but the responses felt muted and forced. Mom would smile and nod, but her questions seemed perfunctory rather than genuinely interested. Dad would grunt his approval, but quickly change the subject to safer topics like the weather or local sports teams. The breaking point came last Tuesday when I received a devastating phone call from Margaret Chen, the owner of a boutique marketing firm who had been one of my most reliable clients for over a year. We had worked together on several successful projects, and I considered our professional relationship to be built on mutual respect and trust. "Emma, I need to talk to you about something," Margaret said, her voice unusually formal. "I've been hearing some concerning things about your work reliability, and I think we need to discuss whether continuing our partnership is the right decision." My stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, what do you mean? Has there been an issue with any of the work I've delivered?" "No, the work itself has been fine," she replied carefully. "But I've received information suggesting that you've been struggling with consistency and meeting deadlines with other clients. Given the importance of reliability in our industry, I can't afford to take risks with my business." I was stunned. "Margaret, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding. I've never missed a deadline with any client, and I maintain detailed records of all my project timelines. Could you tell me where this information came from?" There was a long pause. "It came from someone who claimed to know you personally and was concerned about your professional reputation. They said you'd been having personal issues that were affecting your work quality, and that several clients had expressed dissatisfaction." The conversation continued for another 10 minutes, with me desperately trying to defend my reputation while Margaret remained politely but firmly skeptical. By the end of the call, she had decided to terminate our contract, effective immediately. I lost not only a significant source of income, but also a valuable professional reference. That evening, I called 2 other clients to check on their satisfaction with my work, worried that similar rumors might be circulating. Both assured me they were happy with my services, but one mentioned receiving a strange phone call a few weeks earlier from someone asking questions about my reliability and professionalism. "I didn't think much of it at the time," said David Rodriguez, owner of a small tech startup. "The caller said they were considering hiring you and wanted references. I told them you were excellent to work with, But now that you mention it, the questions seemed oddly specific about potential problems rather than general qualifications. As I hung up the phone, a terrible realization began to form. Someone was actively sabotaging my business by spreading lies about my reliability to my clients. The betrayal felt personal and calculated, designed to destroy the professional reputation I had worked so hard to build. But who would do such a thing, and why? The next morning, I woke up with a sick feeling in my stomach and a determination to get to the bottom of this sabotage. I made a list of everyone who had access to my client information and could potentially know enough about my business to sound credible when spreading lies. The list was disturbingly short. My family knew about my work, but most of them didn't have specific details about my clients. My closest friends were supportive and had no reason to harm me. That left one person who had intimate knowledge of my business operations, my client relationships, and my daily schedule. Fiona. I tried to push the thought away, but it kept returning like a persistent headache. She lived in my apartment, saw my work calls, knew my client names, and had been present during many of my professional conversations. She also knew about my past mental health struggles and could weaponize that information to make her lies more believable. But why would my own sister destroy my livelihood? I decided to test my theory carefully. That afternoon, I mentioned to Fiona that I had landed a potential new client, a fictional marketing firm called Brightstone Creative. I made sure to sound excited about the opportunity and mentioned that they would be calling my references soon. "That's wonderful, Emma," Fiona said, giving me a hug. "You deserve all the success in the world." Her enthusiasm seemed genuine, which made me question my suspicions. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the sabotage was coming from somewhere else entirely. 3 days later, I called the main number for a real marketing firm I had researched online, pretending to be interested in their services. During the conversation, I casually asked if anyone had contacted them recently, asking about a freelancer named Emma Taylor. "Actually, yes," the receptionist said. "Someone called yesterday asking about your work quality and reliability. They said they were from Brightstone Creative and were considering hiring you. Is that a client of yours?" My blood ran cold. Brightstone Creative didn't exist. I had made it up to test Fiona, and now someone was using that fictional company name to spread lies about me to real businesses. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My own sister, the person I had trusted with my home, my struggles, and my dreams, was systematically destroying my professional reputation. I needed proof before confronting her. That evening, I set up a small recording device in the living room, hidden behind some books on the shelf. I felt terrible about recording conversations in my own home, but I needed evidence of what Fiona was doing. The next morning, I pretended to leave for a client meeting, but instead parked around the corner and waited. Within an hour, I received a notification on my phone from the recording app. Fiona was making a call. I listened to the recording with shaking hands. Fiona's voice was clear and confident as she spoke to someone on the phone. "Hi, this is Sarah from Brightstone Creative. I'm calling to ask about Emma Taylor, who has applied for a freelance position with our company. I understand she's done work for you before?" There was a pause as the person on the other end responded. "I see. Well, I have to ask some difficult questions because we've heard some concerning things about her reliability. Has she ever missed deadlines or delivered subpar work?" Another pause. "What about her mental health? We heard she's been struggling with some personal issues that might affect her professional performance. Has that been your experience?" I felt sick listening to my sister's voice, so calm and professional as she destroyed my reputation with calculated precision. She was using a fake name, a fake company, and weaponizing my mental health struggles to make her lies more credible. The recording continued for several more minutes, with Fiona asking leading questions designed to plant seeds of doubt about my reliability and professionalism. When the call ended, I heard her immediately dial another number and begin the same routine with a different potential reference. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, crying and trying to process the magnitude of her betrayal. This wasn't a moment of anger or a misunderstanding. This was a sustained, deliberate campaign to destroy my livelihood. When I finally returned home, Fiona was in the kitchen making lunch, humming cheerfully as if she hadn't just spent the morning sabotaging my career. "How was your meeting?" she asked with a bright smile. "It was enlightening," I said, my voice carefully controlled. That evening, I called our brother James. He was the only family member I trusted completely, and I needed someone to help me figure out how to handle this situation. Emma, that's insane, James said after I played him the recording. I can't believe Fiona would do something like this. Are you sure it's really her voice? I'm sure. I've lived with her for 8 months. I know her voice better than anyone. James was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? I don't know. Confront her, I guess. But I'm worried she'll just deny it or try to turn the family against me. You know how she can be when she feels cornered. I'll support you no matter what, James said firmly. This is unforgivable. She's not just hurting you emotionally. She's destroying your ability to make a living. That's beyond sibling rivalry or jealousy. I don't even know what to call it. The next day, I decided to gather more evidence before confronting Fiona. I contacted several of my current clients to ask if anyone had called them recently, asking about my work. 3 of them confirmed receiving calls from someone claiming to represent potential employers, asking pointed questions about my reliability and mental health. Armed with recordings and witness statements, I finally confronted Fiona that evening. I waited until she was settled on the couch, then sat across from her with my laptop open. Fiona, we need to talk about something serious. She looked up from her phone with a casual expression. What's up? Someone has been calling my clients and spreading lies about my professional reliability. They've been using a fake company name and asking leading questions designed to damage my reputation. Fiona's face remained neutral, but I noticed her grip tighten slightly on her phone. That's terrible, Emma. Do you have any idea who would do something like that? Actually, I do. I turned my laptop toward her and pressed play on the recording. Her own voice filled the room, clear and unmistakable, as she spoke to one of my clients while pretending to be from Brightstone Creative. The color drained from Fiona's face as she listened to herself systematically destroying my professional reputation. When the recording ended, the silence stretched between us like a chasm. Emma, I can explain? Explain what? How you've been living in my apartment while secretly sabotaging my career. How you've been using my mental health struggles as ammunition against me. How you've been lying to my clients and potentially costing me thousands of dollars in lost income. Fiona's composure finally cracked. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. Everyone always talks about how successful you are, how you've overcome so much, how proud they are of you. Do you know what it's like to be the sister who never gets mentioned? The one who's still struggling to find her place while you're building this amazing career. So you decided to destroy mine? I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said, tears starting to flow. It started with just one call, when I was feeling really low about myself. I thought maybe if one client had doubts about you, it would level the playing field somehow. But then I kept getting angry every time I heard you on a successful call or saw you celebrating a new contract. The admission hung in the air between us. My sister had systematically sabotaged my career out of jealousy and resentment, using the trust I had placed in her as a weapon against me. You need to leave, I said quietly. Tonight. Emma, please, we can work through this. I'll call your clients back and tell them I was wrong, that I was going through a difficult time and said things I didn't mean. The damage is already done, Fiona. I've lost clients, lost income, and lost trust in my own family. How do I explain to people that my sister was impersonating potential employers to spread lies about me? How does that look for my professional reputation? She packed her things that night while I stayed in my bedroom, unable to watch her gather the belongings she had scattered throughout my apartment over the past 8 months. When I heard the front door close, I felt a mixture of relief and profound sadness. The next morning, I called James to update him on what had happened. She actually admitted to it? He asked, incredulous. She tried to justify it as jealousy and pressure from the family. She said she felt overshadowed by my success. That's not an excuse for destroying your livelihood, Emma. What she did was calculated and cruel. Have you thought about taking legal action? I had considered it, but the idea of dragging my family through a legal battle felt exhausting. I just want to focus on rebuilding my business and my reputation. I can't afford to spend months in court fighting with my sister. Over the next few weeks, I worked tirelessly to repair the damage Fiona had caused. I reached out to every client who had received suspicious calls, explained the situation as professionally as possible, and provided additional references to rebuild their confidence in my work. Some clients were understanding and sympathetic. Others remained skeptical, and I lost several potential contracts as a result of the lingering doubts Fiona had planted. The hardest part was explaining the situation to my parents. When I finally told them what had happened, their reaction was a mixture of shock, disappointment, and an uncomfortable desire to minimize the situation. "I'm sure Fiona didn't mean to cause so much damage," my mother said during a tense family dinner. "She's been struggling lately, and sometimes people make poor decisions when they're in a bad place." "She made dozens of phone calls over several weeks," I replied. "This wasn't a poor decision made in a moment of weakness. This was a sustained campaign to destroy my professional reputation." My father shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Maybe you two can work this out between yourselves. Family is family, after all." But James stood firmly in my corner. "What Fiona did was unforgivable," he said. "Emma trusted her with her home and her livelihood, and Fiona used that trust to sabotage her career. This isn't something you just work out over dinner." The family dynamics shifted dramatically in the weeks that followed. Some relatives sided with my parents, believing that family loyalty should override everything else. Others supported my decision to cut contact with Fiona until she made genuine amends for the damage she had caused. Fiona herself sent several text messages apologizing and asking for forgiveness, but her apologies felt hollow and self-serving. She focused more on her own emotional pain than on the concrete damage she had caused to my business and reputation. 3 months after kicking Fiona out of my apartment, I was finally starting to see my business recover. I had regained most of my lost clients and even landed several new contracts through referrals from satisfied customers. But the betrayal had changed me in ways I was still discovering. I found myself being more guarded with personal information, more careful about who I trusted with details about my work and my life. The silence in my apartment, once filled with Fiona's presence and our shared conversations, had become a reminder of both loss and liberation. I was learning to appreciate the peace that came with knowing my home was truly my own again, free from the threat of sabotage from within.